So thank you very much for inviting me today, and thank you all for coming. I'm Rifa, I'm a digital project manager, and I've been managing the design and build of websites, apps and online projects since about 1998. I've worked for startups and agencies in London and Brighton, and I currently work for Brilliant Noise as senior producer. I've worked on many digital projects, including the original Channel 5 website, the latest version of the Channel 4 news site, and I'm currently working on a redesign of a website for a chain of cinemas. So I'm just going to talk for about 15-20 minutes and give an overview of the two main project management methods and other aspects of the role, and then we'll have time for questions, discussion really. I work mostly for agencies who get commissioned to create a piece of work. So we define the project, that's the scope, what's included, the cost, the time it's going to take, and agree a deadline and milestones. I create a project plan which includes at each stage some client review time and includes time for amends and testing. I also make sure the client has agreed and signed a contract or statement of work, which gives an overview of what's been agreed. Pretty standard stuff. So a project manager has to juggle various aspects of the project. Not only do we have to manage the internal teams who might be working remotely, but we also have to manage the client's expectations throughout the project, and there's usually multiple stakeholders within that organisation. We're also responsible for giving regular updates, flagging up any challenges and risks to the agency that might mean the production director or account directors as well. So I recently worked on an app for a chain of coffee shops, and the developer was in the Cayman Islands, the designers were in Brighton, the back-end development team were in Australia and India. So it took a lot of managing. The communication was key, but obviously that doesn't matter even if time zones aren't an issue. Communication is at the heart of what you've got to do. So a project manager has to have a range of skills, soft and hard, in order to get things done and please everybody all of the time. It doesn't matter which method you use, the buck stops with you and you're in the middle of all those teams. So typically, a digital project has a research and planning phase, a UX wireframe phase, a visual design phase, and then a front-end development phase, and then a back-end integration phase. Each stage will have an output. So clients have to understand that there are often unknowns in digital projects which might not be uncovered or might take longer to investigate or to reach a compromise or solution. So technology moves fast, so a project manager has to be on it and flag up risks, be honest in their communication, challenge and support the team. It's definitely not an easy job. So there are two main ways of working: Waterfall or Agile, also known as Scrum methodology. So what's a traditional project or Waterfall? This links to Prince 2 training as well. So Waterfall is a linear method of planning a project where each stage needs to be completed and signed off before moving on to the next stage. It requires detailed planning at the beginning and a final agreed goal as an outcome. And this kind of project management has its roots in the building trade. I only just found out that Anthony Mayfield, who I work for, his dad wrote the Prince 2 methodology, which he should be good at that then. So every step is mapped out. Here's a Gantt chart, it's a project plan, has all the tasks down the side, the resources, who's going to do that, each task, calendar at the top. One thing finishes, the next thing starts, goes down. That's why we call it Waterfall, the shape of it. So every step is mapped out, each person does their work, it gets signed off, handed over to the next person in the team. When the wireframes are done, they get passed on to a visual designer who creates the Photoshop files that get signed off by the client. Then they get passed on to the front-end developer who turns them into HTML and CSS. Then it turns into a beautiful site, and then everybody's happy. Job done, in theory. So when I worked on the Channel 5 site, we were an agency of 20 people who were essentially working as the web development arm for the client. It was an incredibly ambitious 600k project in 6 months. Site was first of its kind, really, when the BBC was still had that 3-column text-based site. We were doing things with massive images and flash animation. But it was also, each genre had a separate site on the main website, which reflected what was going to be broadcast that evening. So the deadline couldn't be moved, but if anything changed on the schedule, it meant that we still all had to work late to get that delivered. So we didn't have any other methodology at the time. This is how we worked. So that meant that keeping the morale of the team up and making sure the quality of the output was really good was pretty hard, and people often had to stay late. So what's good about Waterfall? It's really good for physical projects like house or a leaflet. Best for projects with defined tasks and phases that must be completed in a specific sequence. For example, you have to lay the foundations before you put the walls up. What's not so good about Waterfall, projects need a lot of planning and scoping out before the work even starts. So changes to the scope itself as you're in the production process can be slow because there's a formal change request process, because changes can be expensive. So this approach is thought to be less effective for digital projects, product design, software, etc. So usually, big organisations in the public sector prefer this method because they have to get their budget signed off maybe a year or so in advance. But the gov.uk site must have had a long planning phase. I don't know if any of you have seen that site. But when they got into producing the site, they actually used a much more flexible method, which they've blogged about recently. So, what's Agile? This is a fast, flexible approach to project management based on the principles of collaboration, adaptability, continuous improvement. Already it sounds much more interesting. Agile methods come from product design and works really well for companies like Apple and Google, who are continually developing their new products and software. This is the manifesto for Agile software development. High ideals about working on projects. A project manager becomes a Scrum Master, facilitating and championing the Scrum ethos and making sure that the team have no obstacles or blockers in their way. That's their main function. So in Waterfall, the scope's very defined. In Agile, all the teams are working together. The developers have input into the design. The product is constantly evolving. There's no final product. Instead, we keep iterating on a minimal viable product or an MVP. So we get the app onto the App Store, get feedback from customers, iterate on that feedback, instead of thinking, let's define everything up front. Okay. So, unlike the orderly stages of the waterfall approach, Agile project management is usually set up in quick, iterative release cycles, known as sprints. These could be every 2 weeks. So the development team can get on with producing features from their backlog or wish list in an order that they decide, and the client sees the product taking shape right from the start. So what's good about Agile? It's best for digital projects, anything non-physical like copywriting, design, code. It allows for quick correction based on client feedback because the client is at the heart of the development. The client is usually the product owner. Agile empowers the team to be much more creative and more effective, and there's a lot more collaboration and engagement from all team members. You don't feel like you're in a kind of chain gang of people doing work. So what's not so good about Agile? It's not really suited for projects that need a strictly defined scope. And sometimes the uncertainty around the budget, the scope itself, can make stakeholders and budget holders nervous. And a project manager or scrum master has to be even more vigilant about what the team are doing. So things like daily stand-ups, which are quick 10-minute meetings every day, really helps communication flowing. Okay. So a word about estimating. So when I'm estimating, the team and I break down all the tasks and estimate how long each task is going to take to do. And then as we're going through the project, we refine that. I multiply the day rate for each role with the number of days we reckon each task will take. Then I add a 10% contingency, at least 10%, onto the total of that. And I must remember to add my own time as a project manager, even if you're a freelancer and it's just you. Just put your time in as a project manager. We often sort of forget to do that. And if you're using freelancers or contractors or suppliers, make sure you add a markup, a percentage markup to that cost to you, otherwise you're just breaking even. So the cost of the job has to have some sort of markup or margin, otherwise if I'm going to break even at best, and I definitely don't want to lose money on the job. It's also best to use a tool or a spreadsheet to forecast where you think the budget's going over the coming weeks or months of your project. So that I can flag early on to the client if we're going to need more budget or if we need to descale or descope or scale back on what we're delivering. So keeping track of where the money's going and how much the team is spending is probably the most important part of project management and defines whether the project has been a success or not. So when we review the project, we can ask the questions, did we deliver on time, on budget, on quality, and exceed the client's expectations? If we can say yes to all these, then we're winning. Then it's a success. Okay, challenges. So these are just reminders, really, for all of you that might be experienced project managers or if you're just starting out managing projects. And some of these are the most common things that people come across. So making sure that your scope is clear from the start. Even if you're working on an Agile project, you still want to know what you're going to vaguely get at the end. Make sure the stakeholders are all on board. That's like the people who really matter in the organisation, internally and externally. Make sure everyone knows who's doing what on the project. Oh, I thought you were doing that. No, I was supposed to be doing that. Who's responsible? What are you doing on the project? Making sure you're tracking the changes. That's where budgets sometimes get out of control, where there's too many things. Can we just do that instead on the project? Yeah, that's not good. Making sure you're tracking the budget. Making sure you're having weekly meetings with your team, daily stand-ups with your team, face-to-face with your client or with on conference calls, just making sure that people are communicating. Making sure the deadlines are realistic as well. Making sure that there's some some flexibility in your project plan. There's nothing worse than project managers sort of going, but the plan says this and you don't not hit the target or yeah, it's no good at all. Make sure you've got the right expertise in your team as well. So if you need to get, if you've got an inexperienced team, make sure they're really skilled at what they're doing, or you've got extra contractors that can help. Make sure that the project fits into the organisation's strategy as well. So there's no point delivering something amazing, but no one wants it. Okay, so tools and training. So there are many more tools and much more support than when I first started in the 90s. It was often a function that people didn't really value very much as well. When things are going really well with projects, people think, why do we need a project manager? When everything's going wrong, then they say, it's your fault. I went on a Microsoft project course and Prince 2 courses. These days I use quite a lot of stuff online. So Basecamp, I don't know if any of you have had a go with Basecamp. I find that really useful because then you can have all your communication in nice threads and things don't get lost and the whole team can feed into it. You can upload files as well. What else can you do? To-do lists that feed into a calendar as well. If you're doing quite simple turnaround, short turnaround projects, then it's helpful because it's got a calendar and you're not having to do a big unwieldy project plan. Trello for agile planning, or for any kind of planning really, comes from the idea of post-it notes like you guys have got here, but you can move them around and it's online so everyone can look at it and feed into it. They're all really friendly products as well, I think, to use. Excel numbers for status sheets and work in progress, just for your own sanity. If you're working on multiple projects, then keeping tabs on all the status of all your projects, you've got to have some sort of list somewhere. Although pen and paper is always good for me as well. Tom's Planner, nice simple Gantt charts I showed you earlier, project plan that actually links all your tasks together so that if one thing changes, it kind of changes all the dates for everything else as well. MS Project, classic project management tool, you can have a go with that, but it is a little bit unwieldy. As I said, it's really for the building industry, but it's quite good fun. These products sometimes are a bit difficult to share with clients as well, so you end up PDFing and sending them to them. Time-sheeting systems, there's loads on the market these days if you're working with multiple teams. But even for yourself, for freelancers, I know there are like really accurate time tracking systems where you switch on a timer and time exactly to the second how much time you're spending. 10,000 feet is quite good fun as well for teams for resource planning. These are just some examples really. You've got to find something that you find interesting to use, friendly to use. 10,000 feet is quite good fun, I think. Shall I move on to this one? Next one. So, resources. Training. Everybody always asks me this, what should I do? Should I do Prince 2 training or should I do Scrum Master training? Prince 2 trains you in Waterfall methodology, really. It gives you a very good, solid project management methodology. And although it's expensive, it's a serious addition to your CV. Everybody will always ask you this, and you'll always say, I never use it. But weirdly, you do. It is inside you. It's like integral to whatever you do. Scrum Master training is well worth doing if you work or want to work on Agile software products. It's the thing that everybody's working with at the moment, so it's really worth doing. But most companies, most agencies aren't using it exactly right. The Scrum community are quite militant about using Scrum in the correct way, but if you work in an agency, you've got a deadline and you've got budgets that you've got to stick to, so we kind of flex it a bit. This is a really good book, Interactive Project Management by Nancy Lyons. It basically documents, it's really good for working in agencies, so it documents the process in a way that I've never seen anywhere before. So it's really worth doing. She's on Twitter and everything as well, so they're really, the other person who wrote it with her, they're really prolific in the project management world as well. Brighton's own Leif Kendall, he wrote a great book called Brilliant Freelancers. That's really good for one-man bands. There's a big bit about managing projects and managing clients as well. And in the States, there's a digital PM summit. There aren't really many conferences for project managers, but this one in the States also has a Google group, which I found really useful to be part of, like talking to other project managers who are basically going through exactly the same kinds of issues and problems that everybody does, whatever size your company is. DARE conference for people skills in London is really good, worth going to and having a look at. They've got their videos online as well. And another great, the Lean approach, if you're interested in Agile, is well worth reading as well, by Eric Ries. And another great website is thedigitalprojectmanager.com. It's quite some fun bits in there, but also lots of top tips on that site as well. So project management is essentially about managing people effectively. So best of luck with your next project.